Warm greetings to all the viewers. Today we are in conversation with Colonel R. Hariharan sir, a retired officer of the Intelligence Corps and distinguished member of C3S. Colonel R. Hariharan served in the Intelligence Corps of the Indian Army for nearly 3 decades. His area of specialization included strategic security of South Asia and the Indian Ocean, particularly relating to Bangladesh, China, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka, as well as terrorism and insurgency. The interview today is on the topic China and Myanmar's strategic economic relations. So, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me today, sir.
Thank you, Delhi.
And yes, sir. So, I would like to start off by asking you the background of the Sino Myanmar relations and how it has evolved over the years, sir, with the context of the coup taking over now and the rocky relationship China shared with Myanmar. What is what? How has it evolved through the years, sir?
Firstly, Myanmar, like India, shares a common border with China, whereas we share the Tibetan border mostly and Xinjiang border. Actually, the Myanmar shares the mainland border, that is Yunnan province, mostly, and it also has a bit of McMahon line, which has been recognized by the Chinese, unlike India, where they do not recognize. So, historically, there had been a lot of mixing up between the Chinese and the Myanmaris. They were the Myanmar name came only in the 90s. The military regime gave it because it is otherwise it was known as Burma, because Bamar is the tribe, that is the ethnic identity of the majority of nearly 70% people. That's a Bamar identity. So they were called the Bama, they say, and the Britishers called it Burma from Bama. And Myanmar is the Burmese way of saying, indicating their country, apart from the ethnic identity. That is how the military regime changed it. Historically, there had been three invasions, three clashes between Chinese and that is between the 14th and 17th century. And one was with the Mongol period. The last one was the Qing dynasty, that is the Manchu Empire. At the time, when the Manchu Empire came, the Manchu Emperor tried to displace Ming king. Ming is a Han-Chinese dynasty, whereas Manchu Empire, that is uh, Qing, they tried to defeat him, and Tongu Emperor, the Tongu dynasty emperor, was ruling the whole of modern day Myanmar. He was a very powerful Burmese emperor. So he provided support to Ming dynasty. So there had been the border had been uh, seen a lot of exchange of people. There are people living across the border of similar ethnic identity. Burma is a country of diverse ethnicities, more than 43 ethnic groups. But officially, they have grouped them as the, for apart from Burma, there is, you can say, the identity of other people also are there. And historically, the invasions have been coming from north to south and south to north, because the mountain ranges between the two main rivers that divide, that is the Irrawaddy and Chindwin, run parallel from north to south. So the invasion had been through the rivers. And China's Burma's coastal system does not permit the, the creation of harbors. Because of these huge rivers, there is a lot of sandbanks. So the Dawei on the southeast, that is an important point, and the Sittwe, what is called the Arakan. It was on the Arakan coast. Now, Sittwe also up the river you have to go, and that is the river port. India had been helping to develop. So the Chinese are developing a port. We will discuss it further.
Yes, sir.
So we should understand it is not a homogeneous country. There are different ethnic groups. When they became independent, that is in 1948. Till then, they were the British, during British colonial rule, they used Indians, troops and policemen and all to control the Burmese, because they did not create a Burmese administrative system as they created in India. So there had been a love-hate relationship with the Indians, and Indian moneylenders, particularly from Tamil Nadu, they took a lot of land in lieu of the debts. So first thing that happened after independence was they were driven out. The independence also didn't come as peacefully as India or Sri Lanka independence came. It came after a bloody war led by Burma Independence Army, General Aung San. He had supported the Japanese. When the Japanese started losing, he joined the British and drove out the Japanese. The Aung San legacy is the one that united the country. We must understand this, because many may not know. Because British are very fond of divide and rule policy. They have divided the traditional relationship between the various ethnic groups, particularly the Karyans, Shans, many of whom were converted to Christianity during the British period. The British had raised during Second World War the army also, using them as levies. Similarly, Lushai levy was also raised. That is on the border of our Mizoram. That's the Chin area, Chin province. So, at that time, when the independence came, 1948, it was thanks to Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's intervention. It was handed over peacefully to the Aung San, General Aung San, and he signed a protocol. He held a conference saying with all the ethnic groups, because some were wanting independence, like the Karyans, part of Karyani, they also call Shans, they also wanted independence. So they signed an agreement in which he agreed to a united constitution called it Union of Burma Constitution. It is based on that. They went around the world to find out which constitution suits them. Somehow they zeroed on Czechoslovak model. Based on that constitution, the traditional habitation of the various tribal groups, they were given the right to be autonomous, if need be, to break away. However, the, the, the parliamentary democracy didn't work in Myanmar because even as independence, before independence came, Aung San was assassinated. And it was like a headless chicken. The groups, anti-fascist People's Party, they call it, that by the the party broke up. There were about over 50 parties, political parties. And there was a strong communist party also, which also had two factions, white flag and red flag. And the Kareans were rebelling. They almost came to capture Rangoon because they are south of Rangoon administratively. And India sent troops to protect the Prime Minister UNO at that time. So India had to send troops. So we should see China in this background because China helped the communists till 80s, till 1980 with arms. It gave sanctuary in the Yunnan province along the border. There's a place called Riuli across this thing because the tribes were similar. They were of Chinese origin, Han origin, and they spoke also a dialect which is different. And they were given, the communists were given support. So naturally, only when, though Zhou Enlai had built good relations with Myanmar, because Myanmar was the first country to recognize the PRC, People's Republic of China. What I mean to say is, in spite of that, they had signed an agreement also, peace and you can say, what you call, respecting each other's territorial integrity. And they also agreed upon the Panchshila of non-aligned movement. UNO and Prime Minister Nehru were very close friends also. So, in spite of that, the Chinese continued to arm because the Communist Party of China believed in exporting revolution. It was the Cold War days. So Americans also stepped in. So there was absolute chaos. So the UNO requested army to sort out the issue initially in 1960. When the army came, it stayed permanently. They said, we are the guarantor of the Union of Burma, otherwise it will break away. There was General Nevin. Nevin was one of the original, 20 people who went along with Aung San to Japan for training, military training. He said my method of socialism is the best, and he nationalized everything, put army people to rule the country. So totally democracy was snuffed out. So generations of people have been brought on this militarized environment. And the insurgencies continued. Actually, it increased because he said it is only this tribal groups only are recognized. Whereas there are 53, there are 2% are Chinese, another 2% are people of Indian origin. There are Anglo-Burmese, nearly 50,000 were there, like Anglo-Indians. And there were what they call the Muslims, Burmese Muslims. There were what you call Rohingyas, who had Bengali speaking people who had traditionally did trade with area. Now at that time it was eastern India, that is Arakan province. Now it is called Rakhine because Rakhine people form one of the recognized groups. It's called Rakhine, and they were denied membership. Citizenship. Indians were also denied citizenship. So there were generations of people who have lived in Myanmar who had no citizenship. This is a big issue because army decided who will be the citizen for popularity's sake. Burma is a Buddhist country, mainly, about 70% Buddhist. Small number, about I think 6 or 7% is Muslims. Muslims are also of mixed descent, and there are Hindus also, small number, who stayed on in Burma, and Christians. The Karens were mostly Christian, supported by Baptist Church. Similarly, Lishus in the northwest, Kachins in the border, northern border along along China's border. The Kachins also Christians, Baptist Christians, who continue to have links with US. So we can see the scenario. They were getting arms from the Chinese. They were getting support from Baptist Church. Actually, Mrs. George W. Bush Jr. had a support group in US. She was the head of the support group for Karen breakaway groups. So you can imagine the relevance of army. People thought without army the country will break away. Army broke away from all international bodies, from the ILO, from even Olympic Games. They didn't take part. So it became an isolated country till Nevin, because of old age. There was a coup. I will not go into it. And the army successors of Nevin, they had to bring constitutional changes because the economy was in chaos, and that is how the present constitution was adopted, which has got 25% representation for army in parliament to follow. So any amendment to the constitution has to have army's blessing. The president election has to have army's blessing. The Home Ministry, Public Security, Defense Ministry, they are all under the control of army. This is in a nutshell. And it is now February 2021, that is last year. The army carried out a coup to overthrow the newly elected parliament, which was democratically elected. But in spite of 25%, the elected people had huge support for Aung San Suu Kyi, our National League for Democracy, which came to power rather reluctantly with this constitution. Actually, from 2000, it is only 10 years since the present constitution was assured. In 2010, the NLD didn't take part in the election because its leaders were under arrest. So, army had its own party, and they put them in the place. Then Sen was elected. He formed the thing. He introduced a level of democracy. He was an ex-general. And the public welcome. Internet was introduced. Public communication was introduced. All these things were not there. For foreign exchange. Otherwise, it was only how we use foreign currency for going abroad and all.
Yes, sir.
You cannot do that during the army regime. These were eased. So US also tried to welcome it, though it was a controlled democracy. The US president welcomed it. So the sanctions which were imposed, international sanctions, one because of human rights violations, they were lifted slowly. And in spite of, even during the military rule, India, Japan, South Korea, they continue to deal with this because India had no other option, because the Naga tribes, who were Nagas and Mizos, they had sanctuaries in Burma because the people are similar. Naga tribes are there in Burma also. And similarly, the Chins are very similar to Mizos. And so they had to deal with the existing government. So they had been cooperating. And Burma has very rich natural resources.
So, if I can interrupt right now,
Yeah.
my second question is based on what you're explaining right now, which is the coup which took over Myanmar a year back. And since we're talking about China and Myanmar, how do you think the junta, which is being in power right now, will affect the China-backed projects in Myanmar?
You see, China has always, earlier I told you that only when Deng Xiaoping came to power, after the Cultural Revolution was ended, he came to power, the Maoism was put in shelf, China was opened up. At that time, they became the biggest investor. China took advantage of the military regime because they supplied arms to the military regime, and they the advantage they had was there are gas resources offshore, gas resources available. There are rare earths in Myanmar. Myanmar has got a lot of natural resources, and it has produced a lot of rice. Myanmar, Burmese rice was of very high quality, and things like jade and precious stones, emerald. These were a lot of it. I have seen myself in Burma. This they have produced very high quality. They had a market, and the oil and gas, that is the petroleum and natural gas, they started exploiting. The South Koreans also invested. India also took interest. India also had that. But where the Chinese took advantage was during the sanctions regime, they became the mainstay of whatever the, the military regime wanted. So even after independence, first thing, that is after independence, I mean, after democracy was introduced, first thing, Aung San Suu Kyi, when she became the counselor, that is you can call it the equivalent of prime minister or a president, because there is a constitutional issue. I don't want to go into it. She went and met the Chinese president because Burma is actually the 36% of Burmese exports, and nearly same amount is of imports come from China. So it is an essential part. As against this, India exports to India or imports from India is in rarely in two digits. So it is China cannot be wished away by Myanmar. It is in that sort of log jam. And the Rohingya issue, when nearly 800,000 Rohingyas were driven away because army wanted to, Rohingya had armed themselves also. I have actually operated in that region, that Rohingya border. They asked me also for arms from India to supply. I want to mention this because many think there is no threat. You can see there was jihadi Muslims were coming up in Bangladesh, and before Bangladesh was created, Pakistan was giving them arms. Some of the thing, and in Arakan, that is the Rakhine itself, there was Arakan army insurgents who wanted to break away from Myanmar. Now Arakan army is in total control of practically of the Rakhine area, and they have come to some sort of an agreement with the military junta, which is ruling. In spite of that, there are clashes. So that at that time, when these refugees, they became refugees expelled from their own country. They went to Bangladesh and they took boats. They went to Thailand is nearby. Thailand has provided refugees, Karen refugees earlier, because along the Thai border, Karens are very similar also to Thai. There is a ethnic affinity, and they won't allow this. So Malaysia and Indonesia were dead against the military regime because it was a Myanmar military regime was a member of the ASEAN also. It had become a member, but they could never reconcile their attitude to the Muslims. So China took advantage of all this. In the UN, they would use veto because they are permanent member and try to support Myanmar. But in some cases, they could not because the damage was so big. But they were the main, what you call, providing a fig leaf for these fellows, the military regime. So even after the coup, you find this has continued.
So, my second question is, what are since a part of the CMEC project, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, the Kapu port and all is being built, which is under hold right now. But what do you think will be the implication to India because of the construction of the Kapu port in the Kapu special economic zone? What are the implications India would face?
You see already between Kyak Fu and what do you call in Kunming,
Yes.
that is in Yunnan capital, there is already there is a pipeline, Chinese pipeline for gas and uh, oil from Kyak Fu is in Arakan province. That is the Rakhine state. I am giving the whole thing. The Kyak Fu is one of the few deep water ports. I told you earlier, the coast doesn't lend. So the Chinese have invested in developing oil jetties and for pumping oil. It is nearly 18% of China's gas requirement comes through this. It is already they have invested. And in the gas field, they are holding controlling interest. Actually, we also have invested our two public sector, ONGC and GAIL, Gas Authority of India. They also hold minor shareholdings. And that Kapu is not only Chinese, the others also have invested, South Korean companies and the international investment, because there is gas resources. So all this human rights is forgotten. What the Chinese have done is, just as in Pakistan, you remember the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. When the BRI came, what they have done is they have developed a road communication between Kyakpu and right up to Muse on the border, that is onward to Kunming. That is, it is an inverted Y shape, you see. And the one branch goes to Rangoon. And this is to be developed into multimodal. They have between one part, they have developed rail communication also. Otherwise, it's road. It is not fully complete because it will connect other projects. That is the Eastern Economic Corridor on with the Thailand and with Vietnam, Cambodia. That also. So it is an integrated project they are doing. But unfortunately, it is stalled. The it's a huge project, and it has to be integrated with the overall development, which has become which has not taken place because in Tianjin time, China made a big investment in Mitsone Dam in Kachin state. That public objected, the environmentalist, because all the electricity was going to being bought by China. Nothing was given locally. They say it will be create environmental damage, and the president then abandoned the project. So Chinese never forgave this, and she also, Aung San Suu Kyi also, would not take up the project. So the Chinese have, there had been anti-Chinese riots also, even after the coup was carried out in February 2021. There was a public was attacking all the Chinese projects. So there is that latent sentiment because China had been supporting. There had been so this project itself, the road project also, when it was taken up in 2011, it has to be protected because of insurgent groups. So the army was deployed, very similar to Pakistan's state. There also the Pakistan raised a division worth of troops to protect that coming through occupied Kashmir, that part of the communication through Baltistan. They had to protect the Chinese assets. So similarly, here also is the situation. And the environmentalists also had been involved in objecting to this. And even Mitsone project, which was hydroelectric project, which was abandoned, CAA had a hand in it. It financed the civil society groups to protest, like our Kudamgudam project, you might remember.
Yes.
It had this backdrop foreign thing. The WikiLeaks files, they disclosed the CAA was involved in ensuring that project is abandoned. So why I am mentioning this is, it is not a cakewalk for China because Indian interest is within the army. They in Burmese they call it Tatmadaw. It is the armed forces. Within the Tatmadaw, there are factions who say we should not become too dependent on the Burmese. Sorry, correction, Chinese. So India also they had been reaching out to India, and India had been reaching out. Similarly, there are people who feel there should be open regime, democratic regime. That's what is NLD about. So it is not. Unfortunately for China, and fortunately for others, the Belt and Road Initiative itself has been stalled for the last 2 years. Since 2000, the 2021, it has not made progress. There are the big debts, the projects in Pakistan is the biggest one. Next is probably Myanmar. It has not made progress because Chinese economy itself is getting a reset, if you see. So this is how it is taking place, this thing. Uh, I hope I have answered at least part of your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, since we are in the information age now, how do you see Huawei's presence in Myanmar? And what do you think is the leverage China has over Myanmar in this context?
Till 10 years back, there was no mobile communication
Yes.
in Myanmar. You can imagine. Then people were getting SIM cards smuggled from China and using it. The Kachin area, Shan states along the border. So the Thai general was very close friend of uh, the Myanmar military government's head. So he allowed Thais to come and establish communication. That is how Thailand got a foothold. And Huawei is a world leader. You have to recognize, even US cannot wish away Huawei because they are far ahead in production. In spite of the ban, even India was buying Huawei uh, back end, what you call, uh, material for their telephone system. All countries from Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all these countries have Huawei system. So I don't think you can wish away Huawei. We must be realistic. So, but we should also remember Huawei was originally started for uh, PLA's purpose, People's Liberation Army. So, and IT laws for information technology laws, any company has to provide any data that is required by the government. I am explaining in simple terms, which is not the case in India or in democracies. There is a due process, and they have advanced. China has advanced so much in telecom. They were the capture of the image. They had started using much earlier. They to get hold of people who are what you call the dissidents against the regime from Xinjiang or from Tibet or even in the mainland. So they have advanced technology which uses Huawei. So it will be the Ericsson is coming, I think, trying to come up with solutions, but it will be a long way. So it is requires international cooperation. I think the Quad is one of the issues with the Quad is this protection of information also. So cyber security, I will not be surprised if already a hub operates from Myanmar to which is a Chinese hub listening to the South Asia and East Asia to assist. So it is very much on cards. This is how the Chinese operate.
So and and what is your comments on the Langkong Mekong River Corporation since Myanmar is also part of it? How do you see the Chinese influence in the cooperation itself? Because it has faced many problems. So, what are your comments on it?
The Langkong Mekong cooperation, I think it was China's concept of ASEAN because that is the Myanmar Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, all are ASEAN members. And they used Mekong River, which flows through. In China, it is known as the Mekong, the river. It originates there. So it enters, it is actually the border between Myanmar and Laos, if I remember correct. And it enters Thailand, goes to Cambodia, then goes to Vietnam, where it flows into the sea. Now, if you see, this project is doomed because China has built already 10 dams on its part, very close to the border when it flows. That is east of Myanmar. They have built 10 dams. Now, they are supposed to assist building other dams. Already, since last year, Vietnam and Cambodia have complained the water flow has come down. For the first time in years. If you've seen Mekong River, I was reminded of Brahmaputra when I went to saw Mekong River. It is as wide as Brahmaputra, as virulent. I cannot imagine Mekong River without water. So when they are like this, China has got, it is a multi-trillion economy. These are all barely in double-digit economies, except for Thailand, which is a triple-digit million in millions. And probably the Vietnam also, 149 million or something. So these are all much smaller economies. They don't have international influence. So it was doomed to failure. If you see the proceedings, they have got the foreign ministers' meetings. They have held, I think, in 5 meetings, I think, heads of this thing. It is all flowery speeches the Chinese are giving, and the whosoever is the chairman. On ground, they have this 3+5 cooperation. 3+5 cooperation itself is very similar to what already ASEAN is doing. That is, you have people to people relations. You have to ease trade across the borders, provide a common platform for security and security cooperation. These things. So this, to my mind, it is of no, it will not make progress. It is not even like something like India doing, India at least is a democratic country where there is a parliament accountability. In China, they won't raise, nobody can raise the voice. Here, at least, there are people, you see, East Bengal, correction, West Bengal has got living links with Bangladesh. Tamil Nadu has living links with Sri Lanka. So the issues there will be raised there in especially after Hong Kong has been digested now, brought into mainstream Chinese rule, except for namesake. I see very little hope of Hong Kong Mekong cooperation project. ASEAN itself is struggling because ASEAN's relevance is very much dependent upon restoring democracy in Myanmar. So slowly they're trying to, their representative was not even allowed to step in. So he has made the ASEAN has made efforts, but it has not progressed. Actually, Aung San Suu Kyi, I think she is facing 16 charges. She has been sentenced on so many issues. I don't think they will allow her to come out alive of prison. And this time they have formed a national unity government. All the democratic parties in they are being cooperated on ground by the ethnic insurgents. So the army is not having a cakewalk. So any project of whether it even the China Myanmar Economic Corridor project can take off really. The Chinese have given a big list. The Irrawaddy had published of the projects, 8 projects of which are underway. It looks very nice in paper, but I don't think the Chinese will be too keen. They will wait and watch. After all, it is their money they are investing, and already they have, the CPEC has taken a beating in Pakistan. All the projects are stalled, and the 20th Communist Congress is coming. She will not do anything which will bring disrepute to China, where failure is a possibility. So we should see it in macro level, the China. All in the Rohingya issue also, Chinese intervened. I don't know whether you know. They talked to the representatives, military representatives, and the Myanmar government. At that time, was Aung San Suu Kyi was there as a state councillor, and the Chinese tried to mediate. So at best, earlier also, when with the Kachins and the northern insurgent groups, when there was a talk, the Chinese tried to mediate as go-between. India also has interest in that because some of these ethnic groups border India, and but the Chinese want a role in Myanmar. So even brokering peace or anything, China always would like to have a hand to restore democracy or whatever it is. But China has never made a positive contribution even to the Rohingya issue. So it will be continued to, because we must not forget, it provides, Myanmar is the buffer between mainland China, unlike Tibet and Xinjiang on the west, between the mainland China and India, South Asia. It is a direct access it provides, traversing through the from Yunnan to Kyak you get into Indian Ocean. So it fits in with very well the domination of Myanmar, fits in very well with the strategic big picture of China of ensuring 20th century, so the 21st century maritime Silk Road is dominating Indian Ocean from South China Sea to Indian Ocean onto in consonance with the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. So we should see it in the Myanmar role, China's role, even economic role. We should see it in this big picture.
So after hearing all of your comments, I also want to ask, what do you see? How do you see Myanmar's future, sir, regarding to China and the debts too? With all of that, how do you see Myanmar's future? And Do you think Myanmar will go the Hambantota way, how Sri Lanka was affected, or how do you see the future of Myanmar? So,
They already, they, they, it is already, I think, it need not go Hampan. You see, it need not go at all because Myanmar is no democracy like what you call Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, you see the public protest and all. So in Myanmar, there is no democracy, though there is a constitution. The army has no belief. Army has a lot of investment now in opium trade and also the real estate they have bought in many of the industries. So army is well entrenched in Myanmar. So that is why the problem with the Aung San Suu Kyi had when she was state councillor heading the government. So it is not like it won't go Hampantota way. Already they are controlling the Kyakpu, the Shui, what you call gas fields. It is Chinese investment which is driving. Others are minor partners. They are all developing the tertiary things to the Shui gas field. It is controlled by them. They are controlling the Chinese companies are controlling the pipelines when the road over comes also. So it is much worse than what do you call Hampantota. Sri Lanka, of course, is a democracy. It is very close to India. But that kind of communication doesn't exist between what exists between India and Sri Lanka. It hardly takes. Actually, I can reach Sri Lanka faster than I reach Delhi. It takes about 40 minutes by helicopter, and you can in 2 hours you can reach from India by boat also across the thing. It is not Myanmar also is like that. But I told you Myanmar's configuration of the land, the lateral traverse from east to west is difficult. Even the Sitwe multimodal project we had undertaken, it is hanging fire because the portion between we have developed the Sitwe port, river port, but the road development, which has to be done by the Burmese, part of it, though we are ready to give finance, it hasn't come out because now it has become worse because Arakan army is involved. In the Rakhine, it has to go through Rakhine and the Chin state also. There's a Chins are also in rebellion. Chin Liberation Army. So it has to go through that. That portion is still hanging fire. Just as the problem they are facing, for instance, any lateral route through Sagaing, which is in the heart of Myanmar, which is a Bamar region. It is also maximum trouble-prone area after the coup. So it is going to be like this. It is going to be very difficult for even the Chinese also. It's not merely making investment. To make it work, there is anti-Chinese sentiment also locally.
so, so this is the end of the interview. So thank you so much for taking your time and giving us this interview. I'm sure our viewers sort of got a lot of insight on China Myanmar relations, not only economically but their relations, how historically it has been and how it is right now. So thank you again, sir, for agreeing to do this interview, and I'm looking forward to do and see many more interviews you are giving and viewing it in YouTube. So
Thank you,
thank you
Daniel.
so much. Thank you, sir.